All right, so here we have some components of the movement alphabet. I've selected 15 big ideas to play with, and I wanted to model how I like to pair concepts for students who are younger in language of dance. And what I like to do is I like to pair oppositional or highly contrasting concepts that can be easily defined in relationship or in opposition to each other. So the first pairing I really like, of course, is our action and stillness pairing. And then I like our flexion and extension, traveling versus gesture. So a gesture phrase means that we don't move our center of gravity into a new location. This is the idea of motion and destination. This might be a new symbol for some of you. Some of you may have learned motion toward and away. This is a sort of a grandmother, grandparent symbol to that. Here we have balance and falling. Here we have shape and relationship. And then direction, I'll explain. I like to use some details within direction. And then springing and rotation. So these are really fun pairings that I've used a lot and I continually use. Of course, you can pair across the board, but when you're looking for high contrasting elements, these can be really useful. So if I were to do action and stillness, my primary question is to move or not to move. And one of the elements that I like to play with is the element of time, speed, duration, and accent. So I like to play with time, speed, duration, and accent within those. Flexion, any flexion and any extension, of course, go hand in hand together. And again, I like to play with speed. I also like to play with qualities, with dynamics. So I might say smooth and hard, or free and bound, or sharp and soft. Those can be really fun. I also love to add impulse accents for these, and that seems to be a really gooey way to explore those concepts. I'm just kind of going around here. So then we have traveling and gesture. And this really has the sense of to relocate or not to relocate. And so I will play with focus. Where am I directing my eyes? I'll play with intention. And I'll play with level to see if we can get some nice variety. So here we have motion and change of support. I think I missaid that earlier. I called this destination. This is not destination. It's destinational. It's a change of support. So here motion is an arrow, and that is about going. And then change of support is arriving to a new support. So what's nice about this is that there's the intention of really just not knowing where you're going and moving to move. Move to move, and then move to arrive specifically on a new support. And so it's really fun to play with body parts. And how would I move with my arm versus how might I move to support on an arm? So there's some variety there. Balance and falling, I think, are the pretty straightforward, and it's useful to explore them after you do a change of support, because falling will result in a new support. So something I like to do is play with symmetry and asymmetry. In balance and falling. That can be fun. I can also work with my different connectivity patterns with more advanced students. So am I falling or balancing in body half, or am I in my cross lateral, something like that. It's kind of fun. All right, so shape is a fun way to contrast with relationship. And of course, it's ideal to do with another person, but since we are currently limited with our physical interaction, it's nice to pick a prop or an area of the room and or a facing from an established front. So if you were to have a camera, for example, so are you going to make a shape? How are you relating to a prop in your shape, and creating some variety using these elements within this exploration. Now, I mentioned that direction I tend to use by itself because I find any direction can be very, very general for a lot of students. So what I actually like to do is I like to pair them such as forward and back, or side right and side left, things like that. Or I might pair high level and low level. So I generally introduce these concepts with greater specifics, and I might introduce then the idea of shape. I might introduce the idea of traveling, or I might introduce the concept of stillness as part of this. So again, as you grow through this progression, you can find ways to connect back to things that you've done previously. And then lastly, we have this springing and rotation. And what's fun about springing and rotation is that they're very different from each other, but they combine really nicely. So if you've already done traveling, you can add traveling to your concept. Am I going to spring and travel, or am I going to gesture and rotate, and all of the different directions can be incorporated. And I like to also play with the concept of turning. So this is specifically a turn to the right or left. So I might involve that, and I might also include some flexion and extension in my application. So flexing or extending the legs as I turn or as I spring, and what happens there. So this is an idea of a progression to move through the movement alphabet, and then it circles back nicely on itself. What I don't have listed specifically in this movement alphabet, just for your awareness, is this idea of arriving at a destination, which is wonderful, and it might be a little difficult for students who are dancing at home. The way that I like to introduce the concept is to introduce my areas of the room, downstage. Whoop! I've lost my paper. So I have my areas of the room. This would be downstage. This would be upstage. This is stage right, stage left. And so then you could add your arrival to a specific area. But again, and we have corners too. But for this instance, I would maybe not do this, depending on what space my students had available to them, unless they were working perhaps outside. So that's sort of a added idea that may or may not be useful right now. Okay, again, please, please, please let me know if you have questions, because that helps direct me in my sharing of resources. And if you have any questions on my draftsmanship, it's not always perfect, but what in life is perfect? So we just keep going, we keep exploring, we keep learning. All right, take care, dance on.